On the evening of that first day of the week, when the doors were locked where the disciples were for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood in their midst and said to them, "Peace be with you." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." And when he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. Whose sins you forgive are forgiven them, and whose sins you retain are retained." Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples said to him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands, and put my finger into the nail marks, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." Now a week later, his disciples were again inside, and Thomas was with them. Jesus came, although the doors were locked, and stood in their midst and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands, and bring your hand and put it into my side. And do not be unbelieving, but believe." Thomas answered and said to him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you come to believe because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed." Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book. But these are written that you may come to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that through this belief you may have life in his name. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Have you ever been down to Marquette University, or really any university or college campus, and noticed that when you walk along the streets, you'll notice every once in a while a telephone. And it's kind of a security system, where if somebody needs help, they can go to the phone and pick up the phone and call for immediate help. That they'd be connected with security. And they have them kind of scattered around the campus so that if anybody is afraid or has fears of something going on, especially if you're walking at night, they can immediately go to the phone and feel a little bit safer and know that help is going to come. Well, there was one phone that had a sign on it, "Out of order." And so somebody thought, well, this is very clever of them. They decided to write underneath "Out of order," "Keep running." We hear in today's gospel reading the sense of the disciples living in fear. Now, rather than keep running, what they do is they go and hide. They hid themselves in the room and they locked the doors. They went into hiding because they were in fear. The reading says they were there because of fear of the Jews. Now, it makes sense because Jesus just days earlier had been arrested and crucified. He was put to death. And so their fear was, is this going to happen to us as well? And so they lived in fear. So what happened is Jesus comes and appears to them. And what Jesus does is he gives them the antidote for fear. What does Jesus say to them? He says, "Peace be with you." Matter of fact, he says it 3 times in the gospel reading. "Peace be with you." So the antidote for fear is for us to find peace. To find peace in our lives. We all experience fear in our life. There's not a person here in this church who has not experienced fear at some point in their life. Fear is a part of life. Fear sometimes is good. It protects us. I hope that you have fear of going and running across the expressway. You want to have fear so that you're protected. But at the same time, we cannot allow fear to paralyze us. And so we look at our lives in such a way as, how do we overcome fear? How do we deal with fear in our life? I may have shared this with you shortly after my sabbatical, but I read a great book while on sabbatical, and it talked about fear, and in there they gave the statistic, and I don't remember exactly what the number was, but something like 80 or 90% of all of our fears never happen anyway. We worry all about it, and they just never happen. So somebody who has the fear of the airplane they're going to ride in is going to crash, well, 99.9999999, you can keep on going, percent of the time airplanes don't crash, right? Our fears that we have, for the most part, don't happen. But we have to recognize the fear that we have and overcome them. So how do we do that? How do we deal with the fears that we have? I was, in my homily preparations, I ran across a great article of a study from Duke University. And the study was dealing with anxiety, which in the same way as fear, and what are different things that people dwell on and how they can overcome it. So let me just share with you that list that they gave. They gave 8 points of overcoming the anxiety and some of the things that we should do. The first one, don't hold a grudge. Secondly, don't live in the past. Third, don't waste energy fighting against conditions you can't change. I'm always amazed at how many people become anxious about the weather. Can you control the weather? No, but we get so anxious about what the weather's going to be like tomorrow. We don't have control over that. So that's the point. Don't waste energy fighting conditions you can't change. Number 4, force yourself to stay involved with the living world. Number 5, refuse to indulge in self-pity when life hands you a raw deal. At some point in everyone's life, they're handed a raw deal. Something you just don't deserve. Something bad happens and it's like, you just don't deserve it. Everyone's going to deal with that. But the point here is, don't get stuck there. Don't dwell on it. Recognize it and then move forward from it. Number 6, cultivate virtues of love, compassion, humor, loyalty. The positive things of life. Number 7, do not create unrealistic expectations. We often get stuck in setting up expectations that just aren't real. So we need to be realistic about expectations. And then finally, the 8th is find something bigger than yourself to believe in. For us as a people of faith, something bigger than ourselves is God. But it can also be family. It can be something other than ourselves. And at the end of that point, it says, self-centered people score lowest in any test measuring happiness. When it becomes a me, me, me mentality, they can't find the joy in life. And so we need to find something greater than ourselves. So the one point that I would add to there is the whole sense of how do we trust in God. If we're going to overcome anxiety and fears in our life, is we need to place our trust in God. And truly give our lives to the Lord. There's a great story of a dad and his son who went to an amusement park. And the young boy wanted to go on the scariest ride in the park. And the dad said, "Are you sure you want to go on this ride? It is a scary ride." And the little boy was insistent on going on this ride. So they went on the ride. It starts off, and the kid is scared to death. And the kid is grabbing his dad, and the dad is holding him tight. The kid is shaking the whole ride. They get off the ride, and what does the kid say to the dad? "Can I go on again?" It's a great image for us with our relationship with God. Is because while that boy was very fearful, you knew that dad was going to protect the kid. The dad held on tight. The same is true for us with our relationship with the Lord. Is when we're in moments of fear and anxiety, is we need to turn to the Lord and say, "Lord, help me, hold me, be there for me." And then know that God is going to be there for us and protect us and hold us tight. And so we place our trust in the Lord. And so today we recognize that fear is a part of our life. Anxiety is a part of our life. But what we need to do is find peace. Find the peace of the Lord. Trust in the Lord. And knowing that the Lord says to us, peace be with you. And it's through that peace that we can find joy and happiness and overcome the anxiety and fears of our life. Together let us profess our faith. I believe in one God.